listening to The Local Voice on Orion Neighborhood Television, where our mission is to empower community members like you to create, communicate, and connect through television, radio, and video production. And without further ado, welcome into the show. It's Views from the Sideline, episode 6, and today it's a trade deadline special. We are here. We've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. The trade deadline is upon us. We are approximately 26 hours away from the deadline. A lot of rumors to go through, a lot of stuff to talk about, even some trades to dissect. We'll get into that. The rundown for today's show, we are going to dissect the Pistons, see what's going on with them, the new Blake look Pistons. We go who's buying, who's selling on the trade deadline, break down the turmoil in Cleveland. There's a lot of stuff going down there. And Joey and I will give our teams to watch as we inch closer to that 3 p.m. deadline tomorrow, February 8th. And Joey will give his rumor rundown. Joey, talk to the people.
How's it going, everybody? Trade deadline is upon us. Lots of rumors. Got to see what's fake, what's not. I'm excited to give my take on it.
I mean, Joey describes himself as the realist. So, I mean, he will have those hot takes ready for you. Don't worry about that. Now, Joey, let's jump into some Pistons talk here. It's been, I mean, to say the least, a weird season for the Detroit Pistons. They started off 14-6. Then they go on an 8-game losing streak. They bottom out at 22-26. They acquire Blake Griffin. And now they're back at 500 in a playoff hunt. Half game behind the Sixers. What do you make of this, man? What do you make of the new look Pistons?
So the exact description of an up and down season for the Pistons. But, they're riding high right now, and I'm liking it. It's kind of how I have been explaining it, where the Blake Griffin trade maybe on paper doesn't look that great, and maybe it isn't in the long run. But the energy that you get from a new guy coming in really remotivates the team, and it gives you a new look, and you just get that energy back, like, hey, maybe that was our problem, and then you start riding, and now they're on a little win streak right now, and they're still without Reggie Jackson, so once he comes back into the mix, it might be even better. But the best part about this whole Blake Griffin thing is the way that he moves the ball, him and Andre together. The Pistons are back to how they started the season, and why they started so well is they're moving the ball consistently, and that's what a lot of the good teams do in the NBA. If you want to be successful, you got to move the ball, make threes. And the Pistons started to get really stagnant with the ball recently, and that's, I think, in part why they went on this big losing streak. So now you get this new guy in that's another big guy that's willing to pass the ball. Him and Andre are starting to really mesh well, and they're just playing well right now.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought it up. I mean, it's that motion offense is kind of back into it. It's not stagnant anymore. It definitely helps that they've had a beneficial schedule. The last 4 games have been at home. They've won all 4. And they got a couple more to go on this homestand. It's a lot of home cooking at the Pizza Palace right now. And
yeah, but you're still playing teams like the Portland Trailblazers and the Heat. Those are playoff teams.
No, those are good teams. And then you did play Cleveland, too, to start it off. I know there's a lot of stuff going on there. We'll get into that. But Cleveland's still Cleveland. They still have LeBron James. So that's
yeah, either way, that's a good hump to get over.
Definitely. And right now, the Pistons stand still in the 9th spot, a half game behind Philly after Philly kind of dismantled the Wizards last night at home. And the Pistons will look to jump Philly. Miami is kind of on a downward spin right now. They're 29-25, sitting at 7th in the East. And I think they've lost about 4 of their last 5, so they're not looking too hot right now. So we'll see what happens down the stretch here. A lot of exciting stuff happening. But I want to kind of tee off here. Last time we left the people, we talked about the Pistons versus the Cavs. We didn't really get a look at Blake Griffin yet in a Pistons uniform. We did against the Grizzlies in his debut, and his debut was very solid, to say the least. I mean, he was the first Piston to put up debut numbers like that. He had 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists in that game. First Piston to have numbers like that in a debut since Grant Hill. What do you make of that, Joe?
I mean, you said it right there, Grant Hill. That's one of the Piston greats that you can remember. Grant Hill was always a fan favorite. So anytime you can match numbers that Grant Hill put up, you're doing something right for Detroit. And the best part, too, is that he looked pretty happy to be here. All the pre-interviews, I know the way that it came out through the media kind of portrayed it like Blake was a little upset, and I'm sure he was to an extent. But
I think they portrayed it as more shocked.
Yeah, and you weren't sure of how he was going to necessarily acclimate to Detroit, but he seemed to take it really well. I think when you see all the fans that welcomed him with open arms, I think he immediately kind of felt like he was in the right place, and I now think he's settled in and now he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, definitely. And it was nice to see a buzz around the team. I mean, there are people actually wearing Pistons shirts you could see on the street, Pistons hats, kind of repping the team. Yeah, I know it was a risky deal to say the least, kind of tying up all your money into two big guys, but it was good to feel a little bit of a buzz about this hometown Pistons team you haven't really felt in about 10 years,
Yeah,
to say the least.
you got the media in on the Pistons talking about it. ESPN, TNT, everybody was talking about Blake Griffin and the Pistons, which is great. They don't get too much TV time these days, so that's always good to see.
Yeah, and they really meshed well too. And I'm talking about Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. In this first one, Andre really had some foul difficulties, so he wasn't around the court as much as you'd like. He finished with 14 points, 15 rebounds, but you definitely saw a little bit of chemistry between Andre and Blake. And I'm gonna pose a question to you: is that more so because Andre and DeAndre Jordan, Blake's prior teammate, kind of play that same game, or is it just kind of Blake fitting in with the team?
I think no doubt that it's because Andre and DeAndre have very similar play styles. Andre is a little bit more developed in his offensive game. I think mostly because the Pistons tried to do that last year for him. So he has developed a little bit more of an offensive game rather than straight up just alley oops. But Blake Griffin has always been a pretty good passer for a big man, and having Chris Paul on his team for so long, I'm sure also helped him kind of learn to move the ball and how to get your teammates involved. So he's kind of become already the veteran on this Pistons team, which is another thing that we've kind of needed as well.
Yeah, a little bit more of a veteran leadership, especially with Reggie Jackson out too. Because Reggie, I mean, don't whatever you think of his antics on the court, we talked about it in previous shows. He really has that leadership quality a little bit. And with your leader down, it's a nice pick me up a little bit. One thing I want to talk about too about this game against the Grizzlies is it looked like the Grizzlies G League team. They had a lot of guys, Wayne Selden, to say the least. I mean, it was Marc Gasol and a bunch of young guys playing. They held out Tyreke Evans because of trade talk, and he won't be playing. I think he's probably played his last game for the Grizzlies, to say the least. But what do you take from that game? They struggled. They won 104 to 102 against the Grizzlies. It was a close one, but you even said it last week on the show. If the Pistons lost that game, you were mailing in the season. So what do you take of the Pistons kind of struggling with the Grizzlies?
I think that's just kind of the case that the Pistons were trying to feel themselves out and figure out how they were going to work with Blake, and I think they kind of figured it out pretty quick. But on the other side of it, all these Grizzlies players are young, fiery players that are finally getting their shot to play. They don't have Mike Conley already. They knew that Tyreke wasn't going to play, so all these young guys know that they're going to have a bunch of playing time, and they need to prove themselves to be able to stay on that team or get a new contract with some other team and maybe be looked at. So when you get that kind of opportunity, these young guys, they a lot of the times will step up because, I mean, they're in the NBA. They're not garbage players or anything by any means. They're still trying to prove themselves, trying to figure out how they work in the NBA. So given this chance, it was kind of a tough game just because they came out with a lot of fire, and
Definitely.
I think it threw the Pistons off guard. And
I think a lot of the energy about Blake playing his first game kind of played in part of the Grizzlies giving a better effort, kind of trying to show maybe like shock and show the league,
Right.
okay, we're still here, we're still a team. It's
Yeah.
not just the Blake Pistons show. But here, for the people that didn't get to see the Memphis Grizzly game, here were the starters for the Grizzlies. You had Andrew Harrison starting at point guard, Wayne Selden starting at shooting guard. You had the big man, Marc Gasol, All-NBA player at center. Now, no one's taking that away from him. Then you have Dylan Brooks at small forward and Jarrell Martin at power forward. I mean, that has G League written all over it. They played well. Hats off to them. They were making open shots, but it was a struggle to say the least. You hope it was just because it was Blake's first game. You're getting used to it, and it seems to be the case. Next game up, Pistons Heat. That was an electric game. If you didn't see that, you missed one. Go back, watch the replay. Blake struggled early with his scoring, but he was dominant down the stretch. What did you take away from that Heat game? Because that was really maybe, I want to say, his coming out party as a Piston.
Yeah, and that was also a very big game because the Heat have been that team in the East that everybody's been talking about lately, going on a big win streak and moving themselves into the playoffs, and now Goran Dragic being announced as a All-Star. So that was a kind of a big test for the new look Pistons to be able to take on a playoff team and really see where they're at in the Eastern Conference. And they played really well. They responded well. Blake Griffin and, again, Andre Drummond have developed a pretty quick bond. And I think the Pistons have kind of found their identity with their starters right now of Ish, Reggie, Stanley, Blake Griffin, and Andre. And it seems like it's working right now. Again, I'll be a little bit concerned when Reggie comes back, just from a standpoint of
Chemistry.
getting your guys back. But they've looked really good. And Stanley Johnson is still, he's starting to get back on my good side.
Oh,
I hate to say it, but he's been playing pretty good.
I mean, here's the thing with Stanley Johnson. He seems revitalized. He's getting a lot more touches.
Mhm.
He's kind of gotten that green light from Stan Van Gundy to be aggressive.
Right.
And
I
that's
think
great to see.
I think that was the biggest thing that he wanted back was Stan's trust again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really hurt him, that he had gone from being kind of that guy that Stan would go to for defense and then kind of just getting forget about after his injury. And now finally getting confidence back is really helping him out.
And I think also what plays into it is when you have Tobias gone, Tobias really carried the load from the perimeter for the Pistons, especially with Reggie out. And when you have Tobias Harris in that starting lineup, you want a guy that can spread the floor for him, like a Reggie Bullock. So there wasn't really much spot for Stanley Johnson to be aggressive except for on that second unit. Now you trade Tobias, you get Stanley in the small forward spot. He's allowed to be the aggressor because you have Reggie on the wing still. You got Blake and Andre down low. There's not much attention to him. No one's going to bring double team to Stanley Johnson, and he can kind of take advantage of it. It's great to see, and hopefully we see more of that.
Yeah, and the other thing that's good about this whole thing is that with the Heat having a guy like James Johnson more of their power forward, and he's kind of a bigger...
He played a lot of backup center. He played center
he's
at the
a
end.
bigger, scrappier guy. So this is where I was talking before, where Tobias would struggle in that matchup because, yes, he's tall enough and he has the length, but he's not as strong, I guess, necessarily, whereas Blake is just a big guy.
Yeah.
So he can guard 4s and 5s because he still has the athleticism to stick around them. So that's the nice thing about having Blake Griffin is you have a little bit more size, but he still has the athleticism that Tobias has. So you can guard multiple positions, and we shouldn't have as many issues with like stretch 4s and some things like that. We'll be able to switch back and forth.
All right, yeah. You bring up some really good points there. I mean, the one thing with Blake Griffin is he's not going to get you many blocks. He's not going to get you many steals, but he's an aggressive defender. He's going to stick with his man. He's a bigger body, like you said, and it's just going to benefit the Pistons in the long term to have him guarding other front court rather than Tobias Harris. And you talked about it. Andre Drummond seems re-energized, revitalized, and that's key coming down the stretch here. He had 23 points, 20 rebounds for the Pistons in that Miami Heat win, 111-107. But I want to talk about, too, down the stretch, Stan Van Gundy gave a lot of string to Blake Griffin to kind of make the decision down the stretch. It kind of bit him in the butt a little bit. Blake had a little turnover issues down the stretch in that game, but he kind of turned it on. He had a big 3 late that kind of got the crowd going. It was a really energetic atmosphere at the Little Caesars Arena. And then he made the right decision. He drove they spread it out, went isolation for Blake on the top of the key. Blake attacks the basket. The defense collapses. Blake kicks it out to the wing for Ish Smith for a 3. He made the right basketball decision. Ish Smith is a 25% three-point shooter, but Ish hit the shot. What do you take from Blake not being selfish in that situation and making the right move?
Again, I'm hoping that's kind of his instincts that he's learned from Chris Paul, because I know there was a lot of the time recently with the Clippers that he would kind of go to an isolation maybe a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost reminiscent of our guy, Reggie Jackson, where, try to take over, but maybe go a little bit too far, and then it ends up hurting your team. So I think after that first mistake that he kind of made, he's like, okay, I got to get my other guys involved. And sometimes when you see that, and no matter what Ish Smith's percentages, knowing that Blake is trusting him to make this shot kind of gives you a little bit of a confidence boost. And I think that's really what helped him knock down that 3 late in the game.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we'll see down the stretch. I mean, Miami, that was a tough test, to say the least. But they got another tough test the following game. Monday night at the Palace, Super Monday, after the Super Bowl. Pistons routed the Blazers, 111-91. They really competed defensively, especially in that second quarter. Blake continued to show his versatility at 21 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and he started to pull from deep a little bit. He was 3 for 7 from deep, about his average, about 35%. And Stanley played a key role again in containing that dynamic duo for Portland, CJ McCollum, Dame Lillard. He started against CJ McCollum, and they had Ishgard, Dame, and Stanley really kept CJ under control. And when Dame started to go in the third quarter, they switched Stanley onto Lillard, and he really impacted that game defensively. He didn't really provide much offensively. He had 8 points. He was 3 for 10 from the field. But when you get Stanley still aggressive offensively, putting pressure on the defense, and then also taking away one of their key components on offense, that's what you want. That's a Stanley Johnson that I think Stan Van Gundy drafted and wanted to see for this Pistons team.
Yep, that's exactly what I like to see out of him too. You know, take on the best offensive player on the opponent's team and try to lock him down as best you can, and then not get too aggressive on offense necessarily, at least in volume of shots, but still look for your game and be aggressive attacking the basket maybe, and at least have some confidence just to keep the defense a little bit honest. But primarily, we want him to be that lockdown defender. Honestly, this team has good offensive weapons, especially with Reggie Bullock, the way that he's shooting the three right now. Blake and Andre mixing it up inside and out. They don't need a ton of offensive help necessarily, so it's nice that we have somebody that can really step up on the defensive end, because that's been what we've been lacking all season long.
Yeah, and Stanley continues to impress with that aggressiveness. And in the new role, like we talked about, having Stanley Johnson just have the green light and not worry about getting pulled, especially early in the season. If Stanley Johnson was aggressive and made a mistake, we talked about it on the show a lot. Van Gundy's really quick to pull someone out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's not worried about that. He's playing freely, and it's awesome to see. And hopefully, it's all, we won't really know until next week we get back on the air if he's traded at the deadline. But that's another thing to look at. Is this kind of heightening his trade value, or is this making the Pistons want to contain him? We'll see. We'll find out by Thursday. Dre was dominant again against the Blazers. He was 17 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists to go along with Blake's 6 assists. So you're getting a lot of passing from your two big men. And then he had 3 blocks. And another thing I want to bring up too, the Pistons had 36 assists last night. That's a season high by a long shot. I believe it was 30 before that. 36 assists for a Pistons team, that's unheard of.
Yep, and that shows you exactly what is the recipe for winning in the NBA right now. Even the Golden State Warriors talk about how good of their team is just by player base, but the reason that they're so successful is because the way that they move the ball so quickly. San Antonio Spurs have been doing it for years.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they're one of the greatest organizations in the NBA. They interchange players all the time. You see it, and they finally are starting to get kind of a star player in Kawhi Leonard, but they move the ball, and that's how they win games. You got to move the ball, get open shots, get easy looks, and that's what the Pistons are doing, and they're seeing that it's a recipe for a winning combination.
And the thing you bring up with San Antonio, too, their system is so beneficial to just NBA players in general. You just pick and plug and put a player in that spot, and they seem to produce. I mean, you have guys like Dejounte Murray, Kyle Anderson, filling roles that once were Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Those are Hall of Fame players, and they're still winning 30 games, 34 games out of the year so far with guys like that. So it's awesome to see. And another thing I want to bring up too is Reggie Bullock, the Pistons' best kept secret, because this guy is shooting a 45% clip from deep on the season. And is he kind of the key to the Pistons' success right now?
I think he's a part of it, but he was doing good before Blake Griffin and the Pistons were losing. So I think he's more seen now because Blake is there, that now you see him as the reason we're winning. But he's kind of been pretty consistent recently, and he's been playing really well. It's the other guys that have kind of stepped up more into their role with the whole Blake thing. So I think Reggie is just getting maybe a little bit more credit now, which he deserves, because the Pistons are winning, and you're finally kind of starting to see it, that he's been playing really well, and he's shooting the ball well with confidence, and he's looking like a starter in the NBA, which I honestly never thought he would do.
I didn't anticipate that
at all.
I
thought Kennard or something would maybe get to fit the spot, being a young guy and trying to see how he would react, but Reggie Bullock has done a great job.
And, I mean, it comes at no better time, because with that trade, you lose Avery Bradley, you lose Tobias Harris, you are down to your bare essentials when it comes to perimeter play. And Reggie Bullock, I can't believe I'm saying it, is the Pistons' best perimeter player right now.
And that probably gives him more confidence, too, knowing that he doesn't have to compete with Avery Bradley and even Tobias at the 3 sometimes. that he doesn't have that competition anymore, and it's kind of like Stanley Johnson, where they're freed up. Like they know if they don't do it, if they don't step up, they're done. So they have to step into that role and really accept it. And now that they have this time, they're making sure that they use it well.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll find out again. The Pistons put their 4-game win streak to the test tonight at Little Caesars Arena once again. They play the Spencer Dinwiddie-led Nets again. Is Dinwiddie going to be that? Is he going to hit another game winner on him, Joe?
I don't know. We'll see if he's their real kryptonite tonight or not.
We will find out. And we're going to head to a little break here. But before that, we want to give a special shout out to Jets Pizza. Larry Buss and the crew at Jets Pizza, located at 1091 South Lapeer Road, have been a proud sponsor of Orion Neighborhood Television and Dragon Athletics since 2009. Jets supplies catering for cast and crew. Thank you, Larry, for your continued support. Give them a call at 248-814-7559 for more information. We'll be right back.
Please remember that CFL bulbs, those curly, energy-efficient light bulbs everybody is using to save electricity, shouldn't be thrown away in your trash. Neither should batteries or home medical sharps. You can check with your local community to see where they can be recycled. Some retailers will allow you to bring them in for recycling. You can also order simple kits online that allow you to collect your recyclables and simply mail them away to be properly recycled. This green tip was brought to you by your friends at Waste Management.
Welcome back into the show. It's Views from the Sideline. We broke down the Pistons, the new look Blake Griffin Pistons. And now, with the trade deadline about 26 hours away from us, we're going to move right into who's buying, who's selling. Quick note, we do have some news when it comes to trade and free agency. Lou Williams of the Los Angeles Clippers has just agreed to a 3-year extension with the Clippers, kind of shocking everybody because he seemed like a guy that was going to be on the move. What's your first take? What's your take of the Clippers signing Lou Williams at age 31 to a 3-year extension, Joe?
They like what he's doing for the team right now. And I think they've decided that they're not going to get the pieces that they want. They've been shopping Lou Williams, shopping DeAndre Jordan. It doesn't look like they're getting what they want out of those deals. So they're deciding they might as well hang on to him. And he's playing well for him, so I don't know why they wouldn't. And, they're still in the playoff hunt, so they could still get something done and maybe stick around, and then he's that primary scorer that they need on that team.
Yeah, definitely. It's just a little shocking, especially because once the Clippers shipped out Blake Griffin, it seemed like it was just a complete fire sale. But I guess that's not the case. They just wanted to go in a different direction. The 3-year deal for Lou Williams, the number has not been put out there yet, but there is a team option on that 3rd year. So if Lou kind of does decline after that 2nd year in his extension, they can just cut loose with him, which is a good thing for the Clippers. And now we're going to move on to who's buying and who's selling. The segment where we break down who's buying at the deadline, who's selling, who's giving up the players that we will see moved. I'm going to hit Joey with a team. He's going to give me what his opinion is coming up at the deadline. All right, Joe, I got my first buyer on the list. I have Cleveland. Is there going to be a big move? Do the Cavs make a big move this deadline?
My initial thought is no.
Ooh.
I don't think – I think they're going to be too stingy with that Brooklyn pick, and they're not going to get anything done, and LeBron's going to turn into playoff LeBron. He's going to heat up a little bit and try to get him into the conference finals, maybe the NBA finals, and then he's going to leave.
Joey hit him with the hot take early. Joe, we're supposed to wait till the end for the show.
Oh, that's – You
think?
I think if they don't get anything done and then they lose, I think LeBron's out. You can already tell he's had some problems with how the team has handled things lately and how they're doing deals, not necessarily going to him about what he wants necessarily. Yeah. So that's my assumption, is that if they don't get anything done, he's out. So my opinion is that I don't think they're going to get anything done because they're already preparing for him to be gone. And if that's the case, they don't want to give up that Brooklyn pick. They want to hold on to it tight. For me, it doesn't make sense. I would get rid of it because no matter what, when LeBron leaves, Cleveland's toast anyway. Even if they keep that pick, it turns into something big. They're going to be half of what they were without LeBron. So,
yeah, I mean, as of right now, that Brooklyn pick too, it's not as valuable as it once was. Right now, it would be the number 8 pick in the draft, which that's where Stanley Johnson was drafted. So it says a lot. You never know. That could convey in the lottery. Moving on, We got Boston, Washington, a couple guys that I think are going to be buyers here at the deadline. Boston said to have extreme interest in your boy, Tyreek Evans. Do you think they pull out a deal for Tyreek?
I don't know. The more I hear about it, I think that that's going to happen, but I necessarily don't even like the deal because I don't know where Tyreek fits into that mold of that team. I know that he's a good player and he's high caliber, like I always talk about, but we also said last week where he does better. Like in his years that he did good, his rookie year and this year, he is better when he's ball dominant and he's more of the point guard. He's not going to be the point guard on that team. We know there's a guy named Kyrie Irving over there, and he's a ball dominant point guard himself. And then I guess maybe you run him from the backcourt if they get rid of maybe Terry Rozier or Marcus Smart, but I don't see them giving those guys up for a 1 year loaner. I mean,
I could see Marcus
or a playoff loaner.
Yeah, I could see Marcus Smart just because they don't want to pay him. He's going into restricted free agency, and they already have an abundance of guards. I mean, you have Terry Rozier, who by all accounts is outplaying Marcus Smart right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'd want to pay Terry opposed to Marcus. And there's been rumblings that Boston might shop or is shopping Marcus Smart right now for a first-round pick, and then maybe you slide Tyreek Evans. If you end up shipping out Marcus Smart, you kind of put Tyreek Evans in Marcus's spot. But to me, those are two different players.
Yeah,
Marcus gives you that tenacity on defense. Tyreek is more of an offensive-minded player.
and
I'm not
so
sure it'll work
it
out.
almost sets the Celtics up in kind of a rough spot because then they get the Tyreek Evans loaner. You never know if he'll resign for sure or not.
Yeah, he's unrestricted.
Depending on how they do in the playoffs. And then the Grizzlies come out like bandits getting one of those. They're going to get one of those Celtics picks if they trade for Tyreek, which the Celtics have a plethora of good picks. And Memphis, we already saw their young talent is there. So if they get another one, never know. In a couple of years, the Grizzlies could be back to playoff basketball.
Yeah, and it makes you think, too, if excuse me, if the Grizzlies do get something for Tyreek, get a first-round pick, Conley's out for the year, Gasol's getting up there in age. You're never going to hear about these stars being traded, really underlining rumors. But Gasol could be someone on the move if Memphis is serious about a rebuild here.
Yeah, and they've talked about that a lot back and forth of if Marc Gasol will leave or if they'll trade him. I'm not really sure if I'm sold on that yet, but I'm sure that they're thinking about it. But, Marc Gasol and Mike Conley are still fairly young where they could at least go one more deal before they would have to retire or something, or at least Gasol maybe think about retiring. So I think they still got plenty of good years left in them if the Grizzlies want to keep more of their young core with those two veteran guys. I think that would work out well.
Yeah, and Tyreek Evans we talked about here. He's currently averaging 19.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. It's great to see Tyreek Evans playing well again, and hopefully he can do it in the playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, him to the Spurs would be
fun to see.
Pretty good.
And moving on, we talked about Washington here a second ago. Rumors have it they're in the market for a backup shooting guard or small forward, maybe a Marco Bellinelli of sorts. We'll see. And then there's also been talk about Marcin Gortat maybe being on the move. A lot of discontent. John Wall did a interview with SportsCenter yesterday on SE6, and it was a little groundbreaking. John Wall didn't take too kindly to Gortat and Bradley Beal going on social media and saying how it's fun to see the ball move. It's fun to have success, all probably at the expense of John Wall. It was just really interesting to see there. But maybe you see Washington move a guy like Gortat because John Wall is your stud. And if Gortat's making comments like that, it's not going to bode well for you down the stretch.
Yeah. You want to hear my hot take?
Let's hear the hot take.
Because I thought about it the other day. Trade John Wall.
Trade John Wall?
Okay.
Come on,
hear me
Joe.
out again. Look how good they're playing right now.
They just got dismantled by Philly.
I know. I understand. I think that's more of a matchup issue. How do they guard Embiid? How do they guard Joel Embiid? How do they guard Ben Simmons?
How does anybody guard Ben Simmons?
Even if John Wall was playing,
Yeah.
But Marcin Gortat can't guard Joel Embiid. I think that was a big problem, and you saw he destroyed them almost single-handedly. But think of the value that John Wall can give your team. And if Gortat and Beal feel this way, that they move the ball better without John Wall,
But I'm not sure Gortat's a guy that you're like, okay, if
No, I'm
Gortat's
not
saying this with Beal,
Well,
let's
I'm
make
not
sure.
necessarily saying that you keep Gortat as well, but I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
if you thought about it and the team is playing pretty
No.
good, again, it's a small sample size, but they've talked about it in the past where they play good without John Wall, and
Yeah, it's nothing
people
new.
are starting to downgrade John Wall from superstar to more of, star, kind of all-star kind of guy. Is he really that good? I think he's great, but I'm just saying, if you see the team doing so well, maybe just take a couple offers, see what you can muster up. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would love to have John Wall, Detroit Pistons. But I don't know. It'd be interesting, at least. It would make for a fun trade deadline.
Oh, yeah.
It won't happen for sure, but Marcin Gortat, he's probably going to get moved.
You think so at the deadline? Or do you think more of an off-season kind of thing?
I think at some point it might not be the deadline because they kind of announced it so just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if the market is there for him right now, that people want a player like him. He's not super great offensively. He's not the greatest defender, but he's a very solid center. So I don't know how big the market is for that, for teams going into the playoffs, but you never know. But I think at some point he will get moved. I think they want something more out of their front court.
And another thing, too, even last off-season, we saw Marcin Gortat even tell the Orlando Sentinel in Florida he'd love to retire as an Orlando Magic. And for a guy competing on a playoff run with a very, well, not very successful, but a rather successful Wizards team, you don't want to hear that.
Right.
And we'll see. Wizards have also been linked to the likes of a DeAndre Jordan. Do they have the pieces to get that done? Maybe. I mean, if you package a Gortat,
John Wall.
No, stop.
No.
But if you package a Gortat, maybe a Kelly Oubre, and a couple pick, or maybe one pick, because DeAndre is an unrestricted free agent, that may be enough to get it done. And then you put Wall with DeAndre Jordan and Bradley Beal. That would be a nice little push there for them going into the playoffs. And then to break down a couple buyers in the Western Conference, I got Oklahoma City as a buyer with the Andre Roberson injury. And I have the Golden State. I mean, they've struggled a little bit. They've lost, I believe, now 3 out of their last 5, which is shocking to hear from the all-time great Golden State Warriors. But the Warriors and Thunder have been linked to a former Piston guard, Avery Bradley. What are your take about Bradley? You think Bradley gets moved again?
I think he could potentially get moved. I mean, he hasn't done anything special in his couple small sample size with the Clippers, but he's still kind of struggling a little bit. And man, don't put that guy in the Warriors, because that's exactly what they need, is like a defender off the bench to go with Andre Iguodala.
And here's the thing, Bradley is like, he's a Warriors kryptonite. Every single time he plays them, he just gets into Steph, gets into Clay.
Right.
And that would be really beneficial, especially for a team like Oklahoma City, who just went into Oracle and dismantled the Warriors.
Yeah.
If I was Sam Presti, if I was running the Thunder, I would give up a pick. I would give up maybe a piece to get Avery Bradley, because you have Paul George this year. He's an unrestricted free agent. You want to go all in. You want to see what you can do. At least maybe get to the conference finals. Say, hey, Paul, look what we did in 1 year. Maybe you want to re-sign and take him away from the Lakers. But that's really interesting. I'm really interested to see what goes on with Avery Bradley as we inch towards the deadline. I think he's going to be on the move again. With Lou Williams especially coming to terms on this extension, I think they're going to try to flip Avery for maybe, you could probably get a pick for him. You could probably get a first rounder.
And that's kind of the hardest part, is like both of those teams, the Warriors and the Thunder, don't have a ton of pieces to be able to make the deal. But I mean, I'm sure they could figure it out. It'd have to involve some picks. But if he goes to either one of those teams, I could see him being really good for either one of those teams. Obviously, the Thunder need it more than the Warriors, but I just can't imagine if the Warriors get him and they have all these scrappy guys off the bench like Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Avery Bradley, like
Jordan Bell.
Yeah, that's pretty spooky to have guys like that coming off the bench for an already crazy good team.
And then a couple more buyers, I think, as we inch towards the deadline. We got, I think Denver Nuggets are going to be a little bit of a buyer. They need a point guard. Emmanuel Mudiay is getting a career low 17 minutes per game. They're not impressed with him. Jamal Murray has kind of been the de facto point guard there. There's been rumors they are interested in going after a Marcus Smart. We'll see if that gets in. I think that would be kind of cool. Denver is in that playoff hunt right now. I believe they're sitting at 7th. So it'd be cool to see Denver get back into the playoffs. You put a Marcus Smart, Jamal Murray, Gary Harris. It'd be a dynamic kind of backcourt trio. It'd be fun to watch. Milwaukee, another team that I think is going to be buying. I think they're going to go after still DeAndre Jordan if they can get the right deal. They recently acquired Tyler Zeller from the Brooklyn Nets for Rashad Vaughn and a future second-round pick there. So Milwaukee's a little active. And then to round it out, if I got to put Detroit in a category of buying or selling, I think Van Gundy is desperate enough that he's buying. I mean, he's already shown he doesn't care about his assets. He's going all in. I think as much as Stanley Johnson, I said this, okay, I'm going to go back on my word. Last week I said Stanley Johnson stays a Piston. But I would not be surprised if they packaged him for a guy like a Rodney Hood. And there's been talk that they've already discussed the framework of a deal there. We'll see if anything pans out. But I think Detroit's just got to double down now. You trade out, you're locked into Blake and Andre for a good 4 years now. Trade your picks. There's no point.
Yeah, I think the Pistons need to be buyers as well. As we always talk about, the Pistons seem to be, whether it's unlucky or maybe bad scouting, their draft picks don't tend to matter. I don't know if they use them that well either. Stanley's turning out kind of good.
We'll say okay.
Kennard has looked good in his, again, limited time.
Kennard's his best draft pick so far.
And Henry Ellenson, I don't know what he does.
He doesn't look like an NBA player anymore.
I haven't seen him.
I mean, early in the season and late last season, he seemed like he could be serviceable. But as his confidence has dwindled down, he just looks lost. I mean, there was a couple... He played, I believe, like 2 minutes ahead of Anthony Tolliver in the Miami game, and he was just scrambling. He didn't know where his switch was at. And it was just really disheartening to see a guy that was drafted 18, and he was projected to be in the lottery to really kind of fall off as much as he has. I wouldn't be disappointed to trade Ellenson. I don't think there's a role for him here, especially with Blake, Andre, Anthony Tolliver, who's playing out of his mind. And you're already locked into John Lure. So,
unfortunately.
Unfortunately. And he's probably the ceiling of Henry Ellenson right now, and that says a lot.
Yeah, but I think they need to be buyers. I think they need.
So you're with me too on that one?
Yeah, I think they need one more offensive weapon, maybe off the bench, maybe a starter, depending on how they can work out a deal. Again, the pieces are kind of tough, so you have to give up a pick, which we have no problem with, and then it's just kind of what the asking price is of a player.
Yeah, and then moving on, we're gonna go sellers here. I got the Lakers as a seller. I know there's been rumors that, maybe we'll wait till 2019 to go after our big free agent, but I think that may be a little bit leveraging. I mean, they've been talking about trading Jordan Clarkson for about the whole season. Julius Randle the same. Larry Nance, even his name's come up. What's your take of the Lakers? Do you think they're selling this year or maybe going to hold off?
I think they're going to hold off. I think they're still kind of confused at what they have. I don't know if they know. Because the Clarkson rumors kind of have died off a little bit. I think he's the most likely that they would move at the deadline, but I think more of their moves are going to be off-season type of moves to see what free agents they can attract, and again, a big thing about what LeBron is going to do will play a big factor. So I think they're kind of holding on to see how everything is going to shape up, because I'm pretty sure everybody's expecting a crazy off-season.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, Jordan Clarkson and Julius Randle have been the two key components in the Lakers winning 10 of their last 14, which is their best mark since 2013, which says all you need to know about the Lakers franchise since Kobe's retired and has kind of gone downhill. Moving on, sellers. I had the Clippers here as a seller, but really, I mean, all they have left is DeAndre and now probably Avery Bradley to put in a deal. We'll see what goes on there with Lou Williams being tied into the Clippers franchise now, which is good to see.
Yeah.
Lou has been really moved a lot in his career, and for him to be tied down for a couple of years, it's good to see.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk too that they might even, they might not move DeAndre Jordan. They might not find the deal that they want,
And they rather take that cap space.
right? And they would rather just let him go and see what they can do in the offseason as well. Again, it might be a big offseason.
Yeah, definitely. Then I got the Sacramento Kings. A lot of California teams seem to be looking on the selling side of things. And George Hill deal may come about if the Cavaliers can't find anything. George Hill could be on the move. Here's rumors he may be on the move to Cleveland. And they could sell vets like Zebo and Vince. I mean, Vince Carter in a Pistons uniform? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah, and then I got Chicago. They've traded Nikola Mirotic to the New Orleans Pelicans. And then they have rumors that Jerian Grant and Robin Lopez are on the market. I think Lopez is a guy that could definitely be moved. a very good pickup for a playoff team, and there's really no role for him there in Chicago when they're rebuilding. So we'll see what goes on there. And a really cool, not cool, but interesting rumor I read up on prior to the show here. Atlanta seems to be having a fire sale. Everyone except for John Collins is available. And that gets you thinking here, especially if you're a Pistons fan. Dennis Schroeder? Would he be a good fit here? I mean, maybe package Kent Bazemore in the deal. And, I mean, you can make it work. Your cap would be absolutely atrocious. But like we said, we're just doubling down now. So if you could package into a Schroeder, Kent Bazemore, add more versatility on the wing, have a point guard, maybe that's more of a passer and a better shooter than a Reggie Jackson, it's possible.
Yeah, you'd have to package Kent Bazemore into that because I don't know if Schroeder is actually that much of an upgrade from Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, that's still...
in all honesty.
Yeah.
So you'd have to get Bazemore out of that deal. And again, it might be tough for the Pistons to figure out how to work that deal out because I feel like the asking price would be for Kennard or something, which I don't know. For some reason, that always scares me.
Yeah.
But that would be, I think, the most beneficial for the Pistons if they were going to decide to really go all in, so to speak, which unfortunately for them going all in is still like a middle of the pack playoff
It's
team.
essentially your Brooklyn Nets when they made the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade. I mean, you still have more assets later on than what Brooklyn has now, but I mean, you're like a Joe Johnson Hawks or Joe Johnson's Nets. You're a second round exit team.
Right.
Moving on, I got the Magic hits another fire sale opportunity. Elfrid Payton said to be on the market. The Knicks have shown a little bit of interest there, which kind of is a little interesting to me. I mean, you have Frank Ntilikina, and for a team that just lost Kristaps Porzingis on the year, I mean, I would just let the kid play.
Yeah, I would just the Knicks can basically just throw in the towel at this point with Porzingis down. That's just a huge morale hit in general. They still have some talent where guys like Michael Beasley, I'm sure, will step up and kind of fill that role a little bit. But when you lose a guy like Porzingis, it's pretty much end of the season for them.
Yeah, it's detrimental.
And speaking of the Magic, I think Elfrid Payton would be a better fit for the Pistons, I think, than if you went after like a Dennis Schroeder.
I mean, I understand Elfrid's shooting better from the perimeter. He's kind of capped out here at 37% from deep, but I'm not sure that's reliable. You really think Elfrid Payton?
Yeah, I think that he fills the stat sheet, and I like the way that he plays.
I mean, he is a better defender than any Piston or any point guard, which that would be a nice upgrade. I just don't rely on the shooting. I think shooting's a big thing.
And I don't know if we necessarily need the shooting out of our point guard. I think we still want to move that ball, and I think he's a better passer than Reggie Jackson. And you keep your main offensive weapons, Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, and Reggie Bullock, which I think is better than when Reggie comes back. And I'm not sure how that'll work, if he's going to try to, still get his, or if he's actually going to kind of lay back and be like, okay, you guys are rolling right now. I'm going to try to just fill in the best that I can. But that's the only reason where I would say that Elfrid Payton maybe he fits that role a little bit better. He's like he would be an upgrade from Ish Smith at least.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see he's available. I'm sure Jeff Bauer, Stan Van Gundy would do their due diligence to see if he would be a fit here. So we'll see as it kind of gets closer to the deadline. I got my biggest buyer. I think it's going to be Cleveland. I'm going against your idea here. I think Cleveland's going to make a big move. And big move might be small. It might be George Hill for this kind of deadline, but I think they make a move either way. And before the Clipper news, I had the Clippers as my biggest seller. I'm going against that now. I'm going to say Atlanta makes a couple big moves. And we'll see them kind of sell off. I mean, Marco Bellinelli's they've been saying that he might be gone, so we'll find out there. And we're going to transition here to another segment of the show, Rumor Rundown. I'm going to give Joe a few rumors out in the Twitter sphere, out in the media, and Joey's going to tell me, is this all smoke or is this a real deal? So here we go. First one. Celtics are shopping Marcus Smart for a first-round pick. Is this real or is this just smoke, Joe?
They're shopping him for a first-round pick?
They want to acquire a first-round pick because they do not want to pay him in restricted free agency. That's the rumor.
Well, that sounds real because that's a type of Danny Ainge move. Get more picks, see what you can do. And if they do it before the deadline, I'm sure as soon as they get that first-round pick for Marcus Smart, they'll be like, hey, we got an extra first-round pick, guys. Does anybody want them?
Tyreek.
And then they'll look for other deals. I'm sure if they could do that, they would definitely do it. So I could definitely see that being
Right.
a thing that he's looking for, especially, I don't know. He loves stocking up those
Oh yeah,
picks.
that's one of his favorite pastimes. All right, next up we got ESPN reported yesterday the Wizards shopping Marcin Gortat. Is this the real deal or blowing smoke, Joe?
I think this is the real deal too. Again, I don't think that they'll necessarily get a deal done, but I think they're trying. I think they want to bolster up their front court a little bit better. It's kind of always been their downfall. Their guard play is fantastic with Beal and Wall, and now Otto Porter stepping up. So I think they want to get a better front court somehow, or maybe acquire a pick to get that in the offseason. But I think it's a real thing that
Okay.
they'll try to do.
All right, and then next up we have the Atlanta Hawks holding out Marco Bellinelli last night because of a deal said to be imminent. Now, if the deal is imminent, where is he going, Joe? Well, what team do you think takes a flyer on Marco Bellinelli? Probably giving up a second-round pick or something like that.
I'm sure there's a lot of playoff teams that'll do it. It would have to be a playoff team that would need a shooter. And maybe that's a deal that honestly Cleveland does.
That's a small level deal. I mean,
Right.
definitely.
It's a weird one, but
They love to have shooters.
Granted, they have shooters, but for some reason, none of them are shooting that well right now. So maybe that's something they go after. Maybe a San Antonio Spurs type of deal. That seems like he would fit in to a system like that.
He did play for the Spurs for a
I know,
little
that's
bit.
what I'm saying. So maybe he goes back there. They kind of need some more offensive firepower, and maybe he goes there.
All right, next up, we got front runners for the Tyreek Evans sweepstakes are as the Boston Celtics, Philadelphia 76ers, the Denver Nuggets, and a dark horse team being described as the Miami Heat. Deal, okay, we're hit the deadline, Joe. It's 3 p.m. on a Thursday. Where is Tyreek Evans?
I think the most likely would be the Celtics because of the assets that they hold. Again, I don't think he necessarily fits for the team, but I think that would be where he would go.
So you're saying Celtics? I need a definitive answer. The people need a definitive answer, Joe.
I don't know if. Well, I think he would fit better. He would fit great with the 76ers.
I think that would be an awesome fit.
He is like exactly like the rest of their team. He's big, he's long, and
They have an abundance of picks too.
right.
So
And Ben Simmons doesn't have to play the point guard at that point. They can put Tyreek at the point guard.
Well,
even bring him off the bench.
yeah, I think they'd still leave Ben at point guard just because they want the ball in his hands.
Right.
But yeah, definitely.
They would work it out, but I think
And he's
that
a
would be
big guard.
That would be a really good fit for that team, and they need it with their number one pick being a total bust. But and I don't think it. I guess he would work with the Heat too, though, because he would be a good off the bench player, which he did early on this year with the Grizzlies. But I think most likely he goes to the Celtics just because of the picks that they have, and that's what Memphis wants.
All right, next up, according to ESPN, the Washington Wizards have expressed interest in DeAndre Jordan. Is this real or blowing smoke?
I think it's a bit of both.
Ooh.
Because it's kind of what they want. Like I was saying, try to get rid of Gortat. He's not really what they want moving forward, and I don't think they believe that he's going to get them past the second round of the playoffs, maybe. And DeAndre Jordan is a player that they would love to have, especially paired up with John Wall and all the shooters that they have surrounding him. So it's like the perfect fit. He gets the rebounds, kind of kicks it out, or he gets putbacks and from long shots. I just don't think that it's going to happen. The more that I see this DeAndre Jordan talk, the more I think that he's not going anywhere, that I think he's going to stay with the Clippers. And again, I don't think that the Wizards necessarily have the pieces that the Clippers are looking for either.
All right, moving on. Avery Bradley seems to be a hot commodity even after the trade to the LA Clippers. Does he get moved again by the deadline?
I think if the Clippers are trying to acquire as many draft picks as they can, I think that he'll move again. If they somehow feel that they are moving in the right direction and that he could possibly sign with them and maybe likes LA, which I don't think is very likely.
Yeah.
Maybe they try to coerce him into staying. But I think if they find some picks that they can get for Avery Bradley and maybe some young talent or something, I think they'll pull the trigger on it. Otherwise, I think he would stay.
I mean, he does have the Doc Rivers connection. So if Doc's going to stay there a little bit more, Avery at least has some comfort knowing his system and knowing he got his start with Doc. So we'll see there. Moving on, we got the San Antonio Spurs, which usually aren't in the trade rumor roundup, but they are now, interesting enough. They're said to be interested in Pistons forward Stanley Johnson. Does this make sense for either team?
It depends on what the Pistons would get back. I think this would make sense for the Spurs, obviously with Kawhi Leonard having his injury issues. I think they need that guy to be a defensive force, and he's like a mini Kawhi Leonard.
Mini?
But, yes. But he's got the same play style.
Just not a shooter.
Right. So I think that's kind of what they would be looking to kind of fill the void a little bit.
But if you're the Pistons, what do you want to get back from San Antonio?
That's the biggest problem.
I mean, they have a Danny Green. Pistons went after him a little bit, but I mean, he has a little bit of a hefty contract.
Right.
And yeah, he's a good defender, but do you want to risk one of your rookie scale contracts for Danny Green? That's what it comes down to, I feel like.
You'd probably have to get some sort of pick out of it as well for the Pistons.
Yeah, moving on. We got number 8 in our rumor rundown. We got the Pistons. Even after trading for all-star forward Blake Griffin, they continue to pursue Utah Jazz swingman Rodney Hood. Does a deal get done? Is he a Piston at the deadline?
No.
Think it's all smoke?
I don't think it's all smoke. I think they're trying. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll be able to work out the deal the way that they want it. Again, I think the hardest part for the Pistons is the assets that they have are very minimal. And now that they gave up those picks for Blake Griffin, they don't have as much swing with their picks necessarily. So I think they'll try to do it. I just don't think it's going to happen necessarily. And they might. I still want them to be buyers, but I think maybe if they get a deal done, it would be a smaller deal.
Gotcha. Yeah. Earlier this morning, the Phoenix Suns have made both Tyson Chandler and Jared Dudley available. Do they get moved, and are they even worth compensation?
I think that's a smoke deal.
Smoke deal.
They've been talking about moving Tyson Chandler so many times and like benching him and sitting him all throughout the season. Like they never know what they want to do with him. So I think they're still going to not know what they want to do with him, and they'll probably wait till the offseason to figure something out maybe and see what they can do. Jared Dudley is a little bit more interesting because, again, he's
a shooter.
He's a shooter, and playoff teams are always looking for shooters, especially to come off their bench and to help them bolster their lineup.
That could be another Cleveland thing, too. I mean, you have Kevin Love down.
Right.
Jared Dudley you can probably get at almost nothing, maybe a second-round pick into Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Is that worth it just to make LeBron maybe a little happy? He's got a shooter around him. You
Yeah.
never know. And that does it for Rumor Roundup. We'll see if Joey pans out right with some of his picks here. And now we're going to move on to, I want to get Joey's 3 teams to watch at the deadline. I'll hit you first with them. Mine are the Cleveland Cavaliers. Do they make a run for the present, or do they make a deal for the future? That's really going to be telling to me if they really are behind LeBron James and committed to trying to keep him there. Then I had number 2, even with the Lou Williams news, I still have the LA Clippers as a team to watch. Do they sell off DeAndre Jordan? Do they trade Avery Bradley? There's still a lot of questions to be had there because they still have some assets. And at number 3, we are a Detroit-based podcast. Your Detroit Pistons. Do they acquire another wing? Are they doubling down on the salary cap, essentially? Are they going to commit to be a second-round exit team? It's possible. Get butts in the seats. I mean, sell some playoff tickets, create some revenue. I could see it happening. I could see him trading for a Rodney Hood, for a Stanley Johnson. I could see it happening. It'll be interesting to see what direction Stan Van Gundy and Jeff Bauer go into. Joe, take it away.
I'm going to agree with you. My number 1 is going to be Cleveland, just because they're Cleveland. I hate to talk about them myself, but they're the team that everybody's kind of looking at to see what they're going to do. Like I said, I feel like I have a feeling that they're not going to get anything done. I feel like they're going to be too stingy with that Brooklyn pick, and for the wrong reasons, and they're just not going to find the deal that they want, or they're going to settle for something really small. But either way, everybody's going to be watching that team come deadline tomorrow. My number 2 team is going to be the Pistons, because this is where we determine what they're trying to do. If they're buyers at this, Stan is getting a little bit nervous, and he's trying to make this team have a little bit of run, maybe hopefully be a second-round team, like you said, in the playoffs. But this will decide what the Pistons want to do going forward. And if they kind of say, okay, Blake Griffin, we got him. We're going to lay low for a little bit. Then you realize, okay, they're trying to build maybe a little bit longer run, which us Pistons fans cannot be entirely happy about.
Blake turns 29 in March. So, I mean, your time's running now. If you're going to make a push with Blake, I feel like that's why you got to double down. You got to get players to produce and make this push now.
No, and I agree, but that's what I'm saying. That's what we'll figure out what they're trying to do as a organization. My number 3 team, maybe it's not a surprise to you, but it's going to be the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Just because I think Tyreek is a pretty big asset, and it doesn't take a lot to move him necessarily. You can throw out one of your picks or something because his contract is so inviting, I guess. And another guy that can really help out a playoff team going forward. So I think he's a guy to watch out for. And you never know. I know that the Grizzlies, I'm sure, are at least taking offers on Marc Gasol. So you never know if something comes about that they move him.
Maybe that's a team. Maybe that's a player Washington keys in on.
Right. So that would be a big move. But I just think that Tyreek is one of the better guys out there at the deadline right now, especially for all those playoffs teams. So that'd be my 3rd team to watch is the Grizzlies.
All right. Let's move on to some quick hot takes here. We don't have much time left in the show. My hot take from last week still ongoing. I said the Pistons would win 5 straight. Lo and behold, they're going for the 5th straight tonight. So we'll see if that pans out. That'd be my second hot take to come out correct. And then my hot take for the deadline is we're going to see a lot of smoke. I don't think there's going to be much deals. I think it's going to be quiet. Usually with trade deadlines, it's either quiet or it's crazy. That's my take.
All right, my hot takes. I'm going to have 2. First one, definitely, I think there's going to be a lot of smoke. It tends to happen every year. There's all these deals that are like, oh, this guy's going to get moved, this guy's going to get moved, and then nothing happens. And then my other hot take, which is a very hot take, and I don't know if I actually even agree with my own hot take, but Michigan State going to beat Purdue on Saturday. Since we didn't talk about college hoops, I'd throw that in.
Shout out
big
Spartans.
Big game. Michigan State Spartans versus Purdue on Saturday.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for Views from the Sideline, our trade deadline special. We're glad that you tuned in for us. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about everything that happened last week. We'll get back into some college hoops. We'll talk about State versus Purdue. We'll see what's going on. Thanks for tuning into the show this week. That's Joey Tysick. I'm Chris Pappas. We'll see you next time.
Bye.